So I felt that, you know, a lot of this had to do with the Catholic Church, and yet later I found out that there was this huge Jewish segment that was just kind of in the background and allowing the Catholics to take all the heat for everything. So even if I had most of my car vandalisms and these horrible things happening from against me by Catholic members who were just irate, you know, just very zealous persons who wanted to get revenge for some reason. There was also a Jewish segment, maybe because I had been raped by this Jewish man, that one Jewish man, maybe for some other reason, I'm not sure. All I know is that, possibly because I had said something about wanting to have my taxes paid by the rabbi, I don't know, but there was sort of a joint motive. There was a joint motive to defame me. And that came into play when then later the Blam Week article was written about me that definitely defamed me. And definitely, if you read that article and it just sounds like any woman, stranger that you've never met, it probably doesn't sound like this person. She really liked to sound like maybe it's not that bad of a person, just kind of off kilter. However, it was such a drastic departure from who I am that it was extremely defamatory because it implied that I had committed crimes. She screwed up the facts, she screwed up the timeline intentionally, and then things saying like that I had written 8 inches of sexually explicit email, which I never once sent an email to those monks or a letter. They didn't even have information. I'd sent a couple of emails to Father Joachim McCann that were just about religious things. That was it. I didn't communicate with Brother Ansgar by email ever. And I never sent him a letter that was suggestive in any way. So for them to say that I'd written sexually explicit materials, I was really painful to me because I tried to keep a, you know, quote unquote holy Christian character. I tried to, I obviously wasn't perfect, so I feel like that's very hard to relate to because, and I'm different now, and some things have changed, and obviously time has taken a toll. But at that time, that's where I stood, and that was very defamatory. I wasn't mentally ill, but they implied I was. I wasn't criminal, but they implied I was. And I wasn't a seducing, you know, explicit person, and they implied I was. And especially since I've been raped, that was really horrible to me. And because I was trying to save her virginity, all of that, it was a very big deal. And so anyway, long story short on that, I began to have massive car vandalism, massive tire slashings, my windows bashed. Much later, that was in around 2001, and then later in 2003, I started having my batteries drained from energy, like my car was being zapped or whatever, while I was driving. And I had 3 different cars that happened to, where I'd be driving on the road and all of a sudden my battery's drained and I'm out of power. And I'd have to pull over and I would go to the mechanic, and the mechanic said, your battery's fine, there's nothing wrong with it, we have to recharge it because it's down. It's been drained, but it's a good battery. And so then I later asked, I'm like, how come this keeps happening to my battery? There's nothing wrong with my car that's sucking the energy. You know, there's some things with automotives where something from the car can pull out the energy from the battery and kind of drain it on its own. But there was nothing wrong like that with any of the cars. So I'd be driving on the freeway, and at high speeds, all of a sudden my car is totally instantly out of power, and I'm being forced to pull over on the side of the road when I hardly have enough, when I don't even have enough power to barely get over to the side of the road, you know, and cross lanes of traffic to do it. It was extremely dangerous, almost died, several times because I've been in a huge accident. I also had, not only were my tires slashed earlier, in 2000 and 2001, they weren't just slashed, there were some weird things happening where there were, like, I'd have a blowout. It wasn't slashed, and I'd be driving along, and then I'd have a blowout, and then I'd take the tire back to the Les Schwab people and get a different one, and then they'd look at it and they said, it looks like somebody tampered with this. And how they knew that somebody tampered with that, I have no idea, but I am sure the Les Schwab tire people who work on tires all the time and see stuff, maybe they know a little bit about tire forensics, I don't know. And that happened several times. So, it was dangerous, and I was having a lot of problems at that point. And I tried to report it to police, and it just didn't. They took some of the reports and then ignored the other ones. Then I had a good friend that all of a sudden I had told someone, Krista Schneider, I think, that I had this very loyal friend. And, we weren't best friends or anything, but she was one of my most loyal friends. She knew and believed in me and stood by me when others wanted to distance themselves for, social reasons or whatever. And all of a sudden she was being targeted after I said that she's this loyal friend of mine. So then my support system was being targeted. She was being stalked, harassed, she was raped, and then her cars were being vandalized in her parking lot all the time, constantly. So she actually moved out of the state. She had to move completely out of the state. And then I got a card from her. She tried to send me mail, and when I got it in the U.S. mail, it was all torn up. I got a card from her, literally from the mail, in my mailbox, with a torn up envelope and all roughed up and dirty, and like it had been at the bottom of some kind of thing and like to front. It was very weird. The other problem that was happening at that time is my U.S. mail was being tampered with, and I thought that was strange because that's a federal area of things, and who would have access to my mail but federal postal employees? And I was having a lot of mail tampering. So then I go into these lawsuits, which I already described in how I got into the lawsuits and why I had to do it, because I was forced to do it in order to try to clear my name. Possibly, in hindsight, maybe I could have tried to negotiate better or agree to something with the Catholic Church, but definitely the Willamette Week was one that I definitely should have kept, and I wish that I had not been obstructed from pursuing that, because that has affected my entire future ever since. It's been used against me several times. That article has been used over and over and over and over against me. So it has been a continual pattern of defamation because of that article. I'm going to talk about then how I tried to report this matter to the police, or the rape to the police, and how all of a sudden my investigation for rape was dropped when the article came out tomorrow. And I am going to move very quickly then into meeting the FBI agents, and then my treatment there, and then hopefully I can do all of that tomorrow. And then after that, I will be pretty much caught up to where I left off in the preview of what happened when I went to Washington State and how my travel was obstructed. And that was sort of the beginning and the end. So I think things will move a little quickly, a little faster from that point forward. And I hope that you are well, happy, and thank you for listening and watching.